even know who took her. He cuts her off, repeating the words but with ice behind them. He has a damn good idea who it was. Far from the hotel, in a private suite that hasn't seen sunlight in days, Delkia is slipping into madness. She's sprawled across her bed, sketch pads everywhere, each one covered in frantic drawings of Kyan's face. She stares up at the ceiling, face blank, whispering that she can't remember what he looks like anymore. Then a voice cuts through the silence, saying a woman's room shouldn't be this trashed. She shoots upright, demanding to know who entered without permission. It's Morris. He looks her over like she's something pathetic. She recognizes him instantly and asks what he wants. He says it's simple. He's a merchant, and he only shows up when he's got a deal to offer. Glancing at the drawings scattered across the room, he catches on quick that she's completely obsessed. Without wasting time, he pulls out a small glass bottle filled with murky liquid from the Garam kingdom, the strongest paralysis potion they make. With this, he says she can have Tyan completely helpless. She takes the vial, expression unreadable, and asks what it'll cost. He doesn't flinch. All he wants is whatever Cyan carries. She can do what she wants with the rest of him. The offer sounds like a setup, but Morris insists. That's it, nothing else. He turns to leave, adding that he doesn't care who gets it done. He just needs Cyan out of the picture. And ideally, Gunther handles it first. That's the plan. Back in the slums, Gunther's been waiting. Cyan doesn't take long to show. The brute smirks and tosses something at him. An ear, saying it's a keepsake. The rest of the body? Inside the crate he's sitting on. Cyan stares at the severed ear, barely breathing. His expression goes dark, and his restraint snaps. He warns Gunther that he's going to kill him. The rematch has officially started. Gunther couldn't be happier. Elsewhere, Linsa sits across from Lisa, her voice calm as she asks if she believes Cyan will actually kill Gunther. She nods once, certain, no hesitation in her eyes. Yeah, he's going to finish him. Linz tilts her head, curious, and wonders aloud if she's worried about him. Lisa's tone stays even, saying whatever connection she had to the fighter died out a long time ago. Then she pauses, something lingering on her mind, and finally asks why the obsession with Cyan. Linz chuckles under her breath and says, if she's that curious, she'll ease her mind. Then she asks something strange. Can Lisa remember his face? The question lands hard. She blinks, then blinks again. Slowly, she realizes she can't. She can picture the man, his movements, his voice. But no matter how hard she tries, his face won't come into focus. Linsa smiles and tells her it's a side effect of one of Eru's divine powers, one of the authorities of the god of fog. Lisa's eyes widen at the name, Eru. Linz laughs again, entertained, saying it seems fate's digging up old roots. She says it's funny how her past is circling back like this. Lisa's voice drops, quietly asking if she's in danger. The other woman waves it off, saying no, not danger. They're just about to receive a guest worth keeping, and she plans to treat him right. Back in the junk district, the fight is reaching its peak. Gunther stands amid the ruin, a manic glint in his eye. His arm, once torn off, is now reforged with raw mana, reinforced by scraps around him. He hurls it, sweeping destruction through the air, the swing crashing into Cyan. But our protagonist doesn't flinch or budge. Gunther snarls, demanding to know why he's holding back, why he isn't using the same move he pulled last time. He says if Cyan wants to win, he'd better start trying. Cyan glances down. The ground is scattered with bones, human bones. The brawler sees his look and grins, explaining it like it's nothing, saying he's been digging up corpses of people who were worthless to him. This entire pit is a junkyard. Lambaster's always been full of trash, and he and Lisa grew up buried in it, learning to crawl through garbage just to survive. He recounts how he'd fight off anyone who tried to take advantage of them, clawing, biting, punching, whatever it took. Then one day, a boy showed up. That boy took out the old junkyard boss who made their lives hell, saying he'd dropped out of Lewin Academy just to find some fun. And today's fun? Cleaning up the trash. Gunther remembers it clearly. Blood everywhere, bodies stacked like waste. The guy's name was Ashel. He recalls how the stranger walked toward them afterward, smiling, saying everything was fine now, the junk was gone, and they were safe. To this day, he still can't forget that face. That's when everything changed for him. He started looking up to Ashel, wanting to be like him, and swore he'd clean out all the garbage in Lambaster just like his idol. He started small, grew his crew, took over the junkyard himself, got into the Lambaster cage fights to make money, and ended up killing someone. He got expelled and didn't care. The guy was trash anyway, meant to be thrown out. That was the last straw for Lisa, who cut ties. Didn't bother him though. He'd already become one with the trash heap. He repeats the promise he made to himself, to scrape out every last piece of filth in this city. Cyan interrupts, telling him enough to shut up and fight. He points out that the last attack didn't leave a scratch, and if Gunther wants a shot at breaking through, he'd better push harder. The other man doesn't hesitate. This is what he's been waiting for. With a wild grin, he pulls mana from deep within, fusing metal, bone, and debris into a monstrous arm. In one hand something glows. Cyan spots it instantly. An artifact. Old. Dangerous. Gunther smirks and names it. A gravity chamber. He activates the relic, and a field slams down around Cyan, air tightening like a noose as the gravity multiplies 20-fold. He drops slightly, boots sinking into the dirt like the planet itself is trying to crush him, then launches forward while his opponent's stuck. Karam's voice cuts in, offering backup, but Cyan refuses. No need. In the blink of an eye, he tears through the field and reappears right in front of the other man. Gunther barely sees it before the punch lands, sending him airborne and spinning. Cyan jumps after him, promising to shatter every piece of him, everything except the ear. He kicks him mid-air, then finishes with a crushing blow that spikes him into the earth. The impact rattles the entire zone, scrap metal bursting from the ground as dozens of shards pierce his body. He's not getting back up. Breathing ragged, he looks at Cyan and says he always knew this is how it'd end, but he's got no regrets. He mutters that Louis will probably end up like them. Like him, like Lisa, trash. That's just how things work in this city, rules set by the one in charge. Blood fills his mouth, but he asks for one last thing, for Cyan to stop that from happening. Our boy doesn't answer, just stares, stunned, then runs to the box Gunther had been guarding. Inside, Louis lies unconscious. Time passes. Lisa arrives with a group of guards, eyes sweeping the wreckage. She sees the corpse but doesn't react much, instead ordering her team to check on Cyan. They spot him right away cradling Louis in his arms. He tells them she's not hurt, probably just asleep. Lisa approaches and asks if he's okay. He keeps his eyes on the girl, saying there's nothing she needs to worry about, just take care of her. She asks where he's headed. He rises, setting Louis down gently, and says he's got something to clean up. Lisa asks where. His voice drops, cold and final. Lambaster. He's already walking. Lambaster is carved into 4 main sectors, with the infamous Lambaster cage planted squarely at its heart. To the west sprawls the junkyard, the commercial hubs stretch eastward, and the entertainment strips occupy the southern slice. The city has no official law enforcement, but there's a loosely kept order managed by the heads of each district, who handle just enough to keep things from falling apart. In the past, Cyan glances at Ashel, questioning how he plans to gain control over a place this chaotic. If this were just a regular state, they could storm in with force, but that option's off the table. Instead, he suggests going solo and taking down the district heads directly. Ashel grins, brushing off the idea, saying there's no need. The city's already on the brink of collapse. Even if they sit back and do nothing, Lambaster will still tear itself apart. They just need to show up at the right moment to claim it. Cyan eyes him, skeptical, wondering how he can be so sure. The reply is simple. He's seen it, and the rot runs deep. That confidence still nags at Cyan to this day. He'd inspected the place back then, and Ashel hadn't been wrong. The decay was real. But this time he isn't here to observe it rot. He's here to rip it out from the roots. He steps into Delkia's den of indulgence and is greeted with a cup of tea. The scent hits him, sweet mint layered over what's supposed to be black tea. It's not subtle. She's barely hiding the fact that it's laced. Pulling him into a hug, she watches closely, clearly waiting for him to drink. The aroma reminds him of a standard paralysis blend sold in Garam. She thanks him for accepting her invite, promising tonight will be worth his time. In that moment, he confirms she knows he's aware the tea's spiked. He locks eyes with her, finishes the entire cup in one go, then slumps over, pretending to pass out. A crooked smile stretches across her face. Finally, she's got him. Now he belongs to her. Meanwhile, in the commercial district at Gru Merchant Union, Morris receives word that the trap worked. A Potter informs him a message just came in from the entertainment quarter. He lights up with satisfaction, though irritation lingers. Wasting the gravity chamber on Nanterre left a bitter aftertaste. He went through hell to get that from the Garam Association, but with Cyan captured, the demonic sword is as good as his. One of his guards warns things are going a little too smoothly, suggesting they check the place early. Morris approves but warns them to keep their hands to themselves. Even though they're just doing their job, their eagerness annoys him. He suspects they're after the sword too. Instead of waiting, he hitches a ride in his cart and heads there himself. Pushing open the door to Delkia's chamber, he finds her lounging on the main bed, Cyan unconscious beside her. She teases that he's early and asks if he couldn't hold back a bit longer. She was just about to start the fun. He shrugs her off, saying he doesn't care about the body. It's the sword he wants. She replies coolly that she's already removed it from Cyan. That gets his blood racing, and he urges her to hurry and hand it over. She tells him not to rush, then yanks a rope. What he sees next sends a jolt through him. Bodies, all stuffed and propped up, clutter the room. At the center lies another Delkia, bloodied, beaten, unconscious. He's stunned. The first one peels off her disguise. It's Karam, the living embodiment of the demonic sword he's been obsessed with. The sight still shakes him. He hasn't gotten used to the sword taking human form. A voice rises behind him. Cyan. He says Morris knows too much to walk away. Panic flashes across the merchant's face as he calls for the Shadow Assassin Squad, but a fist drives into his throat before he can finish. If he's so eager to see his men, Cyan says, he can meet them the hard way. Creation space flares to life, unleashing the fog swamp technique. Black shadows swirl around Morris, creeping up as they begin devouring him alive. Cheyenne calmly tells him he knows about the artifacts given to Gunther, and the paralysis mix passed to Delkia. The man stammers, begging for mercy, and swearing he'll never pull anything like this again. But once the fog swamp takes hold, there's no crawling back. The shadows drag his body into a limitless sea, drowning him alongside his guards. With Morris erased, only Delkia remains. Sarika steps up, offering to handle her so Cheyenne can go. He warns her not to overdo it. She smirks, saying there's no need to worry, then strides over and glares down at the woman, accusing her of laying filthy hands on her master. Sarika announces she knows Delkia is fully conscious and better get ready, because she's going to slice her into 1,000 pieces. The pleas come fast, but Sarika doesn't buy them. She slams her fist into her face, shattering her nose. Cheyenne steps out of the chamber. Halfway through the hallway, a ripple in the air shifts, and he senses a familiar mana. An instant later, the surroundings twist, and he finds himself in a different space. It's the fog doom technique, only this time someone else is using it. A voice cuts through the fog, mocking his stunned expression. She introduces herself. Linza Nieloff, one of Lambaster's district heads. The name stops him cold. This is the one he was supposed to purify, and it turns out she's part of the mist. She materializes in front of him, casually noting Sarika must have missed her. He thanks her, saying it saves him the trouble of hunting her down. As far as he's concerned, she's just another backstabber. He cracks a smile, saying he's not in the mood to fight, but danger spikes as he catches an attack just in time and knocks it away. What really stuns him, though, is that Lisa from the front desk is here, and she's siding with Linza. She goes in for an attack, but Cheyenne blocks every strike, keeping her blows at bay with sharp precision, and tells her to step aside. He states plainly that his objective is Linza, and she's not even supposed to be involved in this situation, but she isn't responding, forcing his hand. Left with no other option, he activates a hidden spell called Bloodthirst Wave, blasting her back and freezing her in place momentarily. He finds it genuinely impressive that she's able to take the hit without collapsing. Whoever trained her clearly did an outstanding job. It takes serious discipline to withstand that spell. Suddenly, she reappears behind him and speaks, saying he could have ended her just now. She asks why he didn't go through with it. He ignores the bait and questions how long she's planning to hide in this damn fog. She starts laughing like a maniac, amused, saying she's curious about Sarika's so-called disciple and wants to see how he stacks up against Lisa, the one she personally trained. He furrows his brow, genuinely confused how she even knows that much about Sarika, and wonders aloud what kind of relationship they had. She gives him a playful nudge and tells him he should be worrying about something else. The mage is now preparing a heavy-hitting spell, one strong enough to require a full wash afterward. Dozens of blades materialize and shoot toward him, but he dodges all of them, moving like wind through thread. Lisa follows up with a leaping strike from above, and in a cold, cutting voice, tells him she's cut off all ties with Gunther, but he still needs to pay for ripping away the final piece of her bloodline. He locks onto her eyes and immediately spots it. Her mind's been tampered with. Looks like someone implanted a shadow-based persona using a memory shard and layered it with rage. Closing in on him like this, though, that was her first and last mistake. He seizes her by the neck, completely freezing her movement, and then with a swift, deliberate motion, knocks her out clean with a hit to the head. The moment she drops, it's just him and Linza, standing alone in this artificial fog dimension. He calls out to her, asking her to quit hiding. She steps forward, laughing, and says he should have figured it out by now. This fog isn't just around them, it's a domain formed from her own will. He says it's surprising enough to find out she's part of the mist, but what really makes it worse is that she's both a traitor and a damn thief. She tilts her head and casually asks what exactly he's accusing her of stealing. He points straight at her hand and calls her out. That ring she was wearing earlier is an Antbari artifact, a tool that absorbs basically anything, whether that's raw mana or divine energy. She used it to fake her identity as a mist. He smirks, ridiculing her without holding back, calling her nothing but a knockoff, a fraud wearing borrowed power. That pisses her off. Her composure cracks, and she unleashes a forbidden spell, but what she doesn't realize is that she's walked right into his trap. She taps into the power of the Black Fog God and summons Absolute Flag, her trump card. The fog bends into a sealed sphere, locking them into an isolated pocket space. Within this space, only she has freedom to move. This world is hers. But then, a new voice breaks in. Karam, sharp and sudden, calling out that she's finally located it. A tear rips open across the rail, and through that tear steps Kira, calm and ready, asking if Linz is really aiming for her master. Linza freezes completely, eyes wide in shock. She just watched someone slice open her domain like it was made of paper. She can't believe it. Kira's power is rivaling that of the Black Fog God. Her brain stalls trying to process it. Excluding Uru, there's only ever been one person who could pull this off, and there she is, the blade-turned being. With a calm, vicious glint, Kira playfully asks how many parts Linz wants to be cut into. She snaps her fingers and tears down the entire fog barrier with a single gesture. The woman stumbles back, mouth open, reeling from how casually Kira just walked in, yelling that there's no possible way this brat is the true heir. She insists it's impossible. 300 years and now some random kid shows up? No way. The demon leans in, speaking in a sharp whisper, asking what her deal is. He gives her a look and mutters that she's just throwing a tantrum. Karen boils over, rage spiking. She calls him a child again and follows it up by calling him a fake successor before dashing forward, ready to strike. He doesn't flinch. He grabs Kira, shifting her into weapon form instantly, and with a grin, comments that she's way too sloppy to ever pass as a decent assassin. Both of them activate a high-grade fog skill, Russian Fogstorm, and their weapons crash violently. But even in that clash, Linz has no real power to push back. He asks if she still doubts that he's the real one chosen. He says fine, if she still won't accept it, he'll just show her the real deal. As she stumbles, trying to regain her stance, he unleashes one of his highest-tier fog techniques. A massive orb of dense, churning black energy begins forming. The spell is called Adamant. The mana charges spiraling violently. Before she can even get a breath, the sphere launches toward her. Flashback, years earlier, at the Temple of Black Fog, Sarika looks at her and asks if she's really going to walk away now. The woman replies that she's sick of waiting for a successor who may never appear. She turns her back and asks if Sarika plans to kill her. The priestess calmly denies it, saying there are far worse people in the world, and no reason to kill her yet. Still, the second she senses the fog has corrupted her soul, she'll eliminate her without hesitation, and when that time comes, she'll also reclaim every piece of stolen gear she took. The woman shrugs, almost smug, saying no one even knows she stole anything, so there's no need to be nervous. She offers a farewell and says to stay decent, as if they were still friends. That was the last moment they shared. She left behind an empire's shadow and built a faction in secret, her goal being to create a system where strength got noticed. She didn't want to rot in silence waiting for someone else's legacy. She truly believed she could have been the chosen one herself, and now, this is where it ends. Half her body is burned away, completely gone from the blast. She didn't have a prayer of dodging it. She drops to her knees, breath shallow, life slipping. She asks him to pass a message to Sarika, tell her she was wrong, and finish it. He honors the request. Using her own fog, he dissolves what's left of her body in silence. No one sees their downfall coming. Not hers. Not even his. Following Linz's death, her domain begins to unravel and dissipate. As a result, it collapses into a space just outside the hotel, cutting down the time Cyan would have otherwise spent traveling. Lisa breaks the silence, asking why he let her live. After all, she had tried to kill him and clearly knew far too much about the mist. There was no logical reason for her to still be breathing. In a detached tone, he asks whether she plans to report what she knows. She firmly says no. That's enough for him. He says she's free to go. Bewildered, she asks what she's meant to do now. Before he can respond, the door bursts open and Louis rushes in, calling out her name in a panic. The girl is nearly in tears, saying how scared she was when Lisa suddenly disappeared. Lisa gently assures her she's fine, asking if she's hurt. Louis says she doesn't care about that. She just doesn't want to be left alone again. Lisa had been the kindest person she had ever met, and she begs her not to vanish again. Cheyenne tells her she's just found her new role. The district of Forva has no managers left, so she should take over and make sure Louis grows up better than either she or Gunther ever did. Lisa silently nods in understanding. He bends down and pats Louis on the head, telling her to listen to Lisa's guidance. Louis then asks if he's leaving. He confirms, saying he has to check out. Lisa follows with a question. Will he come back? He answers with a maybe, but deep down, he hopes he never has to witness what he saw in that place again. He heads back to the Fog Temple to follow up on Sarika's mission regarding Linz. When he arrives, she seems surprised that he managed to purify Linz Nihiloff. She asks whether it was difficult. He gives a dry response, stating she already knew how hard that mission was. Sarika nods and notes that he seems to have some questions. He asks about her past connection to Linz and whether she was ever part of the Mist. She confirms they trained together but left when she disagreed with where the Mist was heading. She even took the Hallmaster's ring with her, something passed down through the Order. Cyan pulls the very ring out of his pocket. She tells him it was supposed to be hers, but she wants him to keep it. He's confused, since that ring was only meant for Hallmasters, but she says she no longer needs it. She's strong enough without such symbols. He admits he thought her true motive for sending him on that mission was to retrieve the ring. He hadn't expected this. Karam materializes nearby, remarking that Sarika probably resented Linz, which explains their dynamic. She says she was only keeping a promise, and that most people eventually break under the ring's power. He wonders aloud whether this is a test to see if he too would be corrupted. He asks if she plans to warn him like all the others, that if he succumbs, he'll be purified just the same. Then he questions whether she even accepts him as the next successor. Sarika grins slightly, saying she's simply watching to see whether he becomes a menace to humanity or a hero. Testing a successor is a tradition. She even admits Karam may have chosen wrong. The spirit reacts with anger, but Cyan remains composed. He understands what she means. Days pass. At Lewin Academy, in the dean's office, The administrator is in conversation with a newcomer. With instructor Nella's sudden disappearance, student anxiety has risen. He acknowledges the weight the new appointee carries, but expresses faith in him. The man responds calmly, promising to be understanding toward the students. This is Boris, the newly appointed substitute instructor. Once the meeting wraps up, he excuses himself to tour the academy, but the dean watches him go, sensing something odd in his demeanor. A moment later, Sarika enters the office, apologizing for being late. She was responding to the dean's earlier summons. Boris greets her, introducing himself formally. As he speaks, she immediately senses his ominous aura and the unmistakable stench of blood clinging to him. He radiates danger. The dean mentions that Boris comes from the capital and privately asks her to keep watch over him. Though polite and skilled, there's something unsettling about him. She agrees. That level of blood on someone can't be washed off. It clings, thick and permanent, like the scent of death walking in a man's skin. Later that day, inside the academy, a large assembly of guards has formed, standing in organized lines. The sheer number is staggering. Even Erin is taken aback. She had heard the guard force had expanded since the banquets of blood, but this is excessive, overwhelming even. Suddenly, a voice calls out to her. She turns and recognizes Lunav, who approaches with a warm smile. They walk together, chatting. Lunav expresses her gratitude and happiness, saying she's been doing well lately, all thanks to Erin's help. Erin, being modest, returns the compliment, saying her friend has done a lot for her too. Then she introduces her to Leximus. The three chat and laugh together as they wander, but then they run into Boris. He introduces himself as the new instructor, asking specifically for Princess Erin. She greets him with a polite smile, mentioning she's heard quite a bit about him. She inquires if he's teaching mana application. He then makes a casual request. Could she spare a moment? He claims it's nothing urgent. He just wants to assess her mana levels. He asked her to produce her mana sphere. Without hesitation, she creates and presents the sphere. Leximus and Lunav exchange wary glances. Something doesn't feel right. But Erin brushes it off, insisting it's just a routine check. What could possibly go wrong? As Boris prepares to do something with the mana, a blur of motion interrupts. Cyan appears beside her, grabbing her hand just in time. His expression darkens, eyes sharp as blades, fixed on the instructor. In a low, threatening voice, he asks why the hell he's in Lewin. 1,000 years before the founding era, the Demon King's army had already launched its brutal campaign. On the front lines, human soldiers struggled to withstand the relentless onslaught, desperately casting barrier spells and defensive wards, only for them to be torn apart almost instantly by savage blows, like those of a giant demonic spider. The casualties climbed quickly. They scrambled to regroup, trying to re-establish order in the chaos, but the enemy pressure didn't let up. As they faltered, a blur of motion caught their eye. A figure approached at speed. Cyan. In one swift move, he severed a monster's leg clean off. He'd finally arrived. The rumors weren't lies after all. Though they had believed he'd been deployed to the Western Front, the stories were true. He always showed up when it mattered. He pointed toward the wounded, telling them to fall back. He'd handle things from here. The demonic spider charged up and fired a laser blast directly at him, but he leapt aside just in time, landing clean. Excitement flickered in his chest. He'd hoped it would be a special class monster, but it was too slow to be worth the effort. Disappointed, he summoned the Void Sphere and obliterated the creature in one blow, vaporizing its head entirely. Moments later, he caught the sound of clapping. It was Boris, clearly impressed, grinning as he commented that no wonder Sir Ashel kept him close. He had assumed Cyan was stationed in the rear lines, same as him, but had come north after hearing this front needed reinforcements, only to find the situation already wrapped up. Cyan noted the obvious. These soldiers had been seconds from being wiped out. This war wasn't ending anytime soon. It had been a full year since the Vare family ordered the elite knights on the front to relinquish their power to Emperor Luinel. The monsters seized that moment of vulnerability and began their advance, resulting in an unbroken war ever since. All of it, a direct result of Luinel's greed. Cyan admitted that if Ashel hadn't personally asked him to show up, he wouldn't have bothered. Boris let out a low laugh, admitting he was pushing his luck by saying that aloud, but he understood. He was in a similar boat. Cyan assumed Luinel had sent him too, but the other man corrected him, saying it was his skill set that got him picked. Even so, his values aligned more with Ashel's than the Emperor's. Cyan tilted his head, asking what sort of skills Boris even had. Boris lifted a hand, pulling in mana from the surrounding air. Cyan watched as he pulled residual traces of his own magic, compressing them into a dense sphere. Something about the sphere's energy felt off. He studied it, then admitted there was something in him, maybe even what he'd been looking for. Looking back now from the present, that might have been the moment the hunt really started. He wouldn't let himself slip up again, which was exactly why giving mana access to someone like Boris was a terrible idea. Boris recoiled at the sudden shift in tone. The aggression caught him off guard, unraveling whatever plan he'd been running. Leximus stepped in, shielding Princess Erin and snapping at Cyan to rein it in. Boris tried to smooth things over, claiming it was just a misunderstanding. As a newly appointed instructor, he'd only meant to assess student aptitude. Taeyeon wasn't having it. That was a weak excuse. He'd never heard of that kind of protocol, and he'd only just learned about the appointment. Boris shrugged, saying he'd step back if they felt pressured, adding a half-hearted apology if he'd made anyone uneasy. Taeyeon gave a curt nod, accepting the apology but telling him to get lost before things got worse. He kept hold of Arin's hand as he said it. With no room to argue, Boris turned on his heel and walked out, thoroughly thrown off by the hostility. Lunav blinked, clearly puzzled, whispering to herself, wondering if she'd ever even heard of that instructor's name before. Taeyeon released Arin's hand and muttered an apology for snapping, but she brushed it off, saying she understood and trusted he was on her side. Her cheeks lit up mid-sentence, and flustered, she grabbed Leximus's hand and bolted, muttering something about urgent business. Once they were gone, Lunav turned to him and asked if he knew Boris personally. He said not really, just barely. That surprised her. She'd never seen the guy before. He cut her off, warning her clearly, "Don't dig into him. Don't approach him. Stay the hell away." Later, back in his dorm, Cyan cast a candy waterfall spell, thanking Emily and Brian for holding things down while he'd been out. Brian perked up, but Emily looked annoyed, complaining that he kept interfering with her cooking. He smirked, teasing that he thought she liked being cooked for. She shot back that it felt like her job had been yanked out from under her. He turned toward Brian. Training time. They headed to the academy's practice field, but they were late. Someone else had beaten them there. Leximus was already mid-drill, her claymore nearly as tall as she was, moving like it weighed nothing. Taeyeon wasn't shocked. Impressed, sure, but not surprised. She was bound to be called the continent's top swordsman one day. He grabbed a wooden practice sword and told her to show what she'd learned. She paused, confused by the challenge. He rose to his feet and gave her a slight nod. First strike was hers. She hesitated. She had a real blade. He was holding wood. That didn't feel fair. But before she could finish the thought, he lunged at her. She barely managed to parry, rattled by how a wooden weapon could hit that hard. He adjusted her stance, correcting her form. Leximus grit her teeth and launched back at him, warning she wasn't going easy anymore. She charged at him, swinging hard, but he intercepted every strike without breaking a sweat, redirecting each blow with practiced precision. As he parried, he casually threw in a few compliments, admitting he was genuinely surprised at how far she'd come. His tone shifted as he started messing with her, poking at her rhythm, asking if that was really all she had. He told her to stop holding back, to come at him like she actually meant to kill him. She kept going, attack after attack, her breathing picking up. Fatigue crept in, but she refused to let up, still unable to close the distance or land a single cut. Desperate for an opening, she leapt high, aiming from above, but he cut her off mid-air, slamming her back to the ground. The spar ended with her on the floor, and his sword aimed straight at her face, making it clear who the winner was. He pointed out the obvious. Letting her emotions spiral opened up a dozen weak spots, all of which he had just exploited. She dropped her voice, admitting she didn't even come close to his level, then quietly muttered how nice it must be to have that kind of strength. He reassured her right away, saying she had skill, real, rare skill. Not everyone could handle that kind of sword, especially not as smoothly as she did. She was doing something even veteran knights still struggled with. If she kept up at this pace, he honestly believed no one was going to be able to match her in a duel. She blushed a little, caught off guard by the praise, especially after getting wrecked like that. He shifted the subject, asking Brian to start training with her from now on, then paused, thinking for a second. Of course she was confused. He explained, a little awkwardly, that regardless of her current ability, he had other matters to handle and couldn't train Brian himself right now, so he was leaving him in her care temporarily. She nodded, saying she'd bring a wooden sword next time so they could get to work. Brian piped up, asking where Cyan was headed. He just said there was somewhere he needed to be. Leximus looked more than fired up to get into the next session. As Cyan walked away, that eerie sensation he'd felt earlier still lingered, creeping around the edges of his awareness. Then he spotted her, Lunav, standing dead center on academy grounds beneath the night sky, unmoving. He walked closer and realized she was watching Boris's tower, eyes fixed on the searchlight. He asked if she was planning to sneak inside. She grinned knowingly, saying he already knew she would. Just curiosity, she claimed. She'd never heard the guy's name before, not even once in the entire Garam Mage Association. For someone labeled an 8th Circle Mage, that was not just weird, it was suspicious. That grin of hers didn't fade. She was clearly sticking her nose where it didn't belong and loving it. Then she turned to him and asked if he was coming too. It felt like he already knew Boris, maybe even hated him a little, enough to get involved. He exhaled heavily. She was dragging them both into a mess, and they both knew it. They waited for Boris to finally step out of his room. Once he was gone, Cyan led the way and cracked the door open with a spell. The room inside was stacked with books, dense with ancient symbols and magical writing. One glance was enough. They both thought the guy was a total academic freak. She picked up one of the texts and flipped it open. Most were heavy on old, forgotten spells, stuff that probably hadn't been used in centuries. Then he froze. He felt Karam slipping away from his body. He asked her where she was going. She answered from afar, saying she was heading to the rooftop, telling him to chill, they could keep poking around the lab. He narrowed his eyes, confused by her sudden departure. Before he could dwell on it, Lunav called him over. She'd found something, a strange, dusty volume older than the rest. From one glance, his expression darkened. This wasn't just any book. It was Hearth-Kreia, Boris's armor. Meanwhile, up on the roof, Karam lifted her head, catching a foul, almost rotten smell in the air. She muttered that it was already about to emerge. She called to it, Hearth-Kreia. A presence descended from above. A voice echoed out, calling her by name, saying it had been far too long. 3 centuries to be exact. She forced a grin, anger barely held in check, saying she was doing perfectly fine until he showed up. The voice teased her, saying her personality hadn't changed one bit, joking that maybe that was why she ended up picking Cyan as her wielder. That hit a nerve. She snapped, lunging at him, but he calmly held up a hand, telling her to relax. He wasn't here to fight. He just wanted to talk. She demanded to know what he was really up to, what his endgame was. Down below, Cyan and Lunav were still locked on the old book, Hearth-Kreia. She studied it closely, saying it didn't read like any magic text she'd seen before. It had the structure of a historical chronicle, but everything was encrypted in strange glyphs and codes. Decoding it would take time. She flipped a few pages and pointed out one image, a half-drawn sun. It was the only symbol she recognized, but even that looked off, unfinished. She asked what he thought it meant. A sun, trailing darkness behind it. His face shifted immediately. He slammed the book shut and told her they had to destroy it now. That book was the core of everything, the banquets of blood, and all the disasters that followed. But before they could move, a voice cut in from behind. Boris. Calm. Cold. Cyan hadn't even noticed him coming, too caught up in the book's danger. Boris casually took it back, holding it in his hand like it was nothing, saying he'd been debating whether to drop by, but now they'd saved him the trouble. He called it an interesting coincidence, but spying, that's where the fun stopped. He lifted a hand and cast a spell, blasting Lunav clean through the window. He apologized, sounding almost sincere, saying Cyan didn't need to worry. She was fine. He'd only sent her back to her dorm. Now that they were alone, he said they should talk. He'd been curious about Cyan, about the version the world saw and the one hidden underneath. Cyan clenched his fists. This was bad. He wanted Boris dead right now. But Hearth-Kreia complicated everything. The timing was awful. Karam was still gone. Cut to Karam now lying stretched out on the roof tiles. Hearth-Kreia, or what was inside it, spoke again, asking what she thought it all meant. He told her that the one he served wasn't just powerful, he was chosen, blessed by a god. That meant she was already on the losing side. She didn't blink, didn't care, saying she was a demonic sword, not one of Lumendel's lackeys. She wasn't turning on her wielder just because some divine clown said so. He shrugged, saying that was fine. There were ways around that. If she took over Cyan's body, became the wielder herself, she'd be even more dangerous. She laughed, low and sharp, calling the idea stupid and asking what half-baked schemes they were even trying to run this time. Good versus evil, light clashing with darkness, creation opposed by destruction, dualities locked in an endless cycle of conflict. And as always, light wins in the end. That's how the story wraps up, just like all the others. It's been 300 years since the war between gods and demons reached its final blow. Life on the surface is thriving like never before, but gradually the world is moving on. The old legends are fading. Reverence has turned to apathy, and eventually, they came to a decision. After long debates, they agreed. Maybe what the world needed again was darkness. Darkness to make the light shine brighter. Karam scoffs at the reasoning. So what? She takes control of Cyan's body and goes berserk, and then Hearth-Kreia and Lumendel show up to end her and be crowned the new heroes? That's the plan? He nods, grinning, saying that's exactly it. She doesn't take it well, swiping at his face with disgust and calling his whole pitch complete bullshit. Hearth-Kreia sighs, clearly disappointed. He figured a demonic sword's fate was to one day possess its wielder and asks if she's changed somehow. Her temper flares. She snaps that they were the ones who labeled them evil in the first place. They never once tried to understand. They just handled their own crises and dumped the rest on others. He had hoped talking to her would be as smooth as it was with Eru, but clearly not. So he says farewell and vanishes into the night. She stays there for a beat, rethinking everything he said, and her resentment for Eru only deepens. Back inside the lab, Boris offers Cyan a cup of tea. He doesn't bother responding, cutting straight to it and asking why the man said he was so interested in him. The teacher chuckles, saying it's only natural for someone in his position to take an interest in his students. Cyan raises an eyebrow. He's not even in his class. There's nothing left for him to learn here. Boris casually asks if the dean or his father, the duke, know about that. Cyan tells him to stop dancing around and just say what he really wants to say. The mage drops the pretense, asking if they've met before. He says he's been getting this vibe since the beginning, like Cyan despises him, like he wants him dead, but he's certain they've never met. So he wonders if maybe our MC already knows of him. The answer is flat. No, he doesn't know him. What's more shocking is that no one knows him. An 8th Circle mage should be a household name. Boris says he just likes to live quietly. Cyan shoots him a cold look and asks where he's really from. The reply is evasive, claiming it's a small, obscure place he's probably never heard of. But Cyan sees through it. He's lying. He always has been. Even in a past life, he buried his origin deep, refusing to let anyone in. Cyan asks if there's anything else he wants to know, but Boris glances at the time and smiles, saying it's late. They can continue this conversation another day. Once Cyan leaves, Boris speaks to Hearthcrea, saying he got so caught up in the moment that he couldn't even think of the right words. But now he understands why Ashel felt so threatened. It's Cyan, the one behind the dying princess, the little brother of the savior, chosen by Lumendel, bonded to a demonic sword. Hearthcrea materializes, saying this is what destiny looks like. It's Karam who's supporting him. Maybe he is the darkness they've been waiting for, and if that's true, then he will be the one to make Ashel burn brighter than ever, just like the prophecy. The black fog that blotted out the sun, the savior's bitterness will soon surface. Karam heads to the hall of the black fog. Eru looks up, surprised to see her arriving alone, and asks what brings her here. She doesn't waste time, asking if he really doesn't know, telling him she just ran into Hearthcrea, didn't even know he was that close. His expression darkens, asking if the other god tried anything. But she isn't buying his act, saying he already knows everything. So why isn't he doing anything about it? They're the ones being pushed out. He tells her there's nowhere lower than where he's already fallen. He has nothing left to lose. Her voice rises, saying they're trying to use her and Cyan. Eru asks if that's truly what she wants, to protect Cyan. Then he grants her the right, giving her an official decree. All the mist will move with her, she and Cyan together. She asks him if he's really not going to act himself, if something happened between him and Lumendel. He says every decision he's made for her sake. She turns away, saying she's tired of hearing his pitiful justifications. Skolden has turned him into a recluse, a coward, and she walks out of the hall. Elsewhere, a priest finishes a blessing over Alice. She's kneeling as a proxy of Lumendel, pledging herself to the great god of light. The priest asks if she's truly ready to become a beacon in this cruel world, ready to take the front lines, to fight, to die. He calls her by full name. She accepts the vow, pledging herself to Lumendel's cause. Her expression is composed, but her heart isn't fully settled. Is this really the path she should take? Lately, the Empire's been conscripting all its strongest into the Knights' solidarity, tossing them onto the front lines. Even during disasters like the Banquet of Blood, the Royal Guard had no way to respond. She's dreamed of joining the Knights of Light for years, but maybe what she needs to protect isn't out on the battlefield. Maybe it's somewhere else. A voice cuts in. Someone congratulates her from behind. Cecilia. Alice quickly apologizes, saying she should start calling her by name now, since she's just a novice knight. Cecilia laughs, waving it off, saying she can call her normally, at least when it's just the two of them. Alice bows politely, saying she still sees her as a senior and should show respect. They walk together, chatting on a bench. Alice admits she's worried, afraid she may have chosen wrong. Cecilia faces her seriously, saying that's impossible. She's known her too long to believe she'd ever pick the wrong path. Alice confesses she's still torn. The screams from that day, the ones begging for help, still haunt her. Her companion's voice sharpens, saying there's only one way to be sure, only one way to know if the front lines are where she's meant to be. Alice leans in, asking how. Cecilia tells her to come with her. When she heads there, join her. That's how she'll find out. They talk. Villiard has given them a mission, a serious one. Their first real assignment. Alice's eyes widen. Her own father? She hadn't expected that. Brian looked like he was gearing up for something major. Emily noticed the sudden urgency and asked where he was off to in such a rush. He shrugged, admitting he had no idea. Cyan told him to get ready, so he did. Nana, sounding unsure, asked if this meant they wouldn't see him for a while. Just then, Cyan stepped into the room and assured her it wouldn't be that long, so there was no need to stress. He turned to Brian, asking if he was all set for the trip and where they were headed. The reply came. Their destination was the Valley of Lamia. At the sound of the name, Emily's expression shifted. She recognized it instantly. It was the same place they had visited last time. Curious, she asked how they were even planning to get there. It was absurdly far. He activated a portal using the ring gifted to him by the Hallmaster, saying this would make the trip quick. They needed to move fast. This was the day Alice was supposed to die. Meanwhile, Alice and Cecilia had finally made it to the front lines. Their commander informed her they'd reached their post at last. He acknowledged the tough road she had taken to get there, expressing pride in her role as one of the Knights of Light. She remained modest, replying that she still had a lot to learn. Sliding down from her horse, she mentioned the Duke was waiting for them now. She took her place behind her father, addressing him with formal courtesy and stating she had come in response to his summons. He let her know that today, the second, third, and fourth princesses were all expected to arrive, and she needed to prepare accordingly. She nodded her agreement. He was exactly as cold as she remembered. Soon after, the group spotted the royal guards approaching from the distance. The entourage had finally shown up.